Hey everyone, welcome to the Fridays with Guy program, which is very ironic because we're taping this on Monday. So maybe we'll call it Mondays with Guy. I can't remember what we decided, Guy.
Right, Manic Monday.
Yeah, Mac Monday. That's how happens when you get older. You
Sometimes
forget
it feels
everything.
that way, but today it's St. Patrick's Day, so everybody seems to be in a jovial mood.
I've been chasing kids around all day. How's St. Patty's Day for you?
Well, we didn't have court today. I guess most of the judges have scheduled other activities for the day.
Oh, okay. We can probably talk offline what
Gives
these
new meaning
activities
to
may be.
sober judge.
Yes, we can talk offline about that. All right. Hey, a bunch of stuff we can talk about today. And honestly, if something else comes up, let's go for it. I guess we should talk about March Madness. They had the big brackets last night. I gotta admit, Guy, I used to love every single sport in the world, and I'm like, man, I can't follow everything. So I really
Right.
have followed less college basketball. Are you into the college basketball yourself?
Well, in the last couple of weeks, I kind of got caught up in all the conference tournaments, which really are meaningless. And when the brackets came out, it showed that much with Michigan getting a number 5 seed after
Mhm.
winning almost immediately after winning the tournament for the Big Ten. And the team they beat, Wisconsin, got a number 3 seed. So it
Yeah.
doesn't make any sense anymore.
Well, I'm thinking too with like NIL deals and everything else. Isn't like there should be more upsets now, right?
Right.
I mean, the teams are a little more close together than they were in the past.
And it seems like they're getting more tournaments. There's another tournament you hear about that of the Crown sponsored by Fox Network. It's a
Yeah.
16 team, and I guess the winning team gets 300,000 in NIL money.
Wow. Well,
And these
I
are all
guess
runner-ups that didn't make the 68 team field. I think 3 Big 10 teams are in this Crown tournament, which starts on March 31st on Fox. I guess it's gonna include USC, Indiana, and Nebraska, not Ohio State. So that was interesting in itself, since Ohio State was one of the first 4 out of the big tournament.
yeah, a couple notes on that. It's weird. In case you don't know, I'm a producer for ABC Fox News in Columbus, and I was on the desk last night. Our sports reporter came in, and she was talking about this tournament. And the more she talked about it, I think she got confused, and I got confused. What's going on with this stuff? I mean, she was telling me, we figured Ohio State would not make the men's tournament. They had a rough year, but
Right,
then
exactly.
they ended up being like the first 4 out.
Right.
And I was like, what? They should maybe
Right.
the
They
first
ended
four
up what,
teams.
17 and 15, and
Yeah.
outside, is their overall record in the conference. They were like well below 500, and usually the standard is to at least play 500 in your conference.
Are we looking at this like we some accuse college football of doing it? Let's have the big schools get in. Like the SEC had 14 teams make it.
Right, and I guess what, 31 teams out of 3 conferences. It was 14 from the SEC, 8 from the Big Ten. I'm sorry, 29 from 3 conferences, 8 from the Big Ten, and 7 from the Big 12. So that would make, yeah,
Well,
29 of the 68 bids.
well, I guess the thought is there's more ratings for a bigger school than your Athens, I guess.
Right, and the last team in was North Carolina, which is a long time blue blood, they like to call it, and
Mhm.
they only have one superior win, a quad one victory on their resume. So that kind of got all the media moguls upset last night.
Yeah, but I mean, I'm all for new school. I'm all for the young, but I'm more likely to watch North Carolina than some random school.
That's true, and that's what you probably the committee was thinking about the ratings.
Right.
And
Um,
now you have a first 4 tournament in its own self with 4 going on True TV, which is an obscure cable channel that is up in the 70s in my dial, and
yeah.
they're going to have the first 4 games of the tournament Tuesday and Wednesday, and one of these games will feature North Carolina.
Yeah, and little Dayton. So,
Right,
yeah.
in Dayton, of all
Wait,
places.
I'm a little miffed. I mean, the high school state tournament is in Dayton, past couple of years. I'm like, what the heck? Why does this even matter? I mean, come on.
Right.
We have to have our high school tournaments more right in the middle of the year. I remember, I think it was last year, Ursula made the state basketball tournament. It was funny. I got a chance to watch Mahoney Matters to interview
Right.
the head coach, and he was always begging people to come to the game. And not that Ursula does. I mean, Ursula has a great following and everything else, but he knew from Youngstown it's a 4-hour drive.
Exactly. And they unceremoniously were bounced from the tournament. And this year it was interesting. Ursuline didn't even make the regionals. They lost, I think, their first game in the district, and they were headed for Bowling Green for a regional tournament, which is a 3-hour drive. If they had won.
Well, it was a crazy story last night. We'll get back to March Madness. Sorry, I got sidetracked with the high school March
Oh, it's all
Madness.
March Madness anyway.
Yeah. Well, it was crazy. My alma mater, Louisville, actually, they won last night. They're in the state finals, first time ever. And
Uh-huh.
it was an electric atmosphere because they had the semifinal game in Canton. So they played Garfield Heights. It was kind of partway in between both schools. Full crowd, electric atmosphere. Louisville had a big comeback at the end to win, which is great. But how can we replicate this in Dayton? I'm
Right.
sorry. I'm a Louisville fan. I'm not driving from Columbus to Dayton to watch a Louisville game. Sorry.
So let me get this straight. And they usually had, the state tournament would include the semifinals. Now the semifinals are at other arenas.
Yeah, because here's the problem. You got 7 divisions now in high school.
Okay, that's the
So,
problem.
right. So,
There's no way you can schedule 21 games
right.
in 3 days.
Yeah, I mean, they're not have the same problem in, like, for example, high school softball. I remember being there in Akron last year for it. And to have 4 divisions, to have a semifinal and a final in the same, arena or stadium or whatever you want to call it, it took 3 full days. I mean, from like 10 a.m. to, 10 p.m. every night. And, you can't do that in basketball, So, and to the high school's credit, they figured having it in more localized markets would attract a bigger crowd. So, in Canton, the field house, which is the old classic arena, they hosted 3 games, sellouts, a pretty electric crowd. Where the criticism of the state finals sometimes is you just don't get as big of a crowd. And they
And these
insist,
were top quality games,
yeah.
usually reserved for state semifinals in
Well,
Columbus.
and the other problem is that you insist on, oh, let's have in this really big arena. Well, you're not going to be able to fill up. It's like the old school way of looking at for the football title games. They're like, oh, let's put them in Ohio Stadium. That's where Ohio State plays. Well, in theory, that's great. We get to play in Ohio Stadium. But unless you had some LeBron like figure playing in the game, there's no way you're going to have 100,000 people coming to a high school final game.
Exactly.
So you end up having a real small crowd. So I mean, they and again, basketball, it's just hard when you have it one side of the state. And I know, for, like if you're in Dayton, you might be like, well, why are we having this in Youngstown now? No, just put it in Columbus. I was telling Mike in a podcast earlier today, let's put it in St. John Arena, old classic arena.
Right.
You can have some of the same environment. But, we'll see what happens. But back to the college March Madness. Are you filling out a bracket for this?
No, I've kind of stopped doing that, at least when they went to 68 teams, because it's not a true bracket anymore.
I'll put it this way: if there was a reason, like if work was having something, and who knows, they might. I don't know. I'm off Monday and Tuesday. Maybe I'll get presented with a bracket Wednesday. Who knows? But I just it's more of a social thing, I guess, than anything
Right.
else. And I don't know enough about it. It's like weird gambling.
And it seems kind of sleazy if you kind of log in like to ESPN and try to fill out a bracket with them, and then you're among the literally millions of people that do that.
Or they call it like brackets of integrity. There's people out there that'll enter in 10 different contests with 10 different winners.
Right.
Some people say, fill out one bracket, and that's who you're rooting for. That's who you think's going to win. So
I just like the fact that you can kind of put it on your phone anymore and watch it while you're working
Well,
on Thursday and Friday.
where it gets really shocking to me is I didn't know the team. I mean, obviously I know who the college teams are, but man, I didn't know who was up or winning. I was driving to work yesterday, listening to the sports talk station. They're like, "Yeah, Florida's looking pretty good." I'm like, I didn't know Florida had a good team. Kind of weird. I'll tell you, Florida might be really good for years to come because they had that kid, what's like 7'8" or 7'9", some ridiculous height, and they redshirted this year. He's not even going to play.
Right.
And assuming he stays with Florida, man, if their team is projected to go to the Final Four, they have a kid like that's not even playing. Hey, they might be good for a while.
It's kind of ironic that, as soon as the SEC in the NIL area goes down in its status in the football field, it has raised it in basketball.
Yeah, I don't know. And the other weird thing about it, and again, half the stuff that we talk about, it's all about money. That's all it is. But what's this about the Crown? I guess this is this new college basketball tournament, kind of like the NIT. I mean, NCAA is the big deal.
Right.
But I got confused, and our reporter at the station got confused too, because we were trying to figure out the Big Ten supposedly was contracted to have at least 2 teams there.
Right. And they ended up with 3. And of course, Fox broadcasts most of the Big Ten regular season games. So I guess they wanted a vehicle to finish off its coverage for the year. And so they invented another tournament. And then they used this NIL bonus as incentive for the winners.
I could be wrong, but it seems like they're trying to get more precedence over the NIT because, like, I was talking to reporter saying, "Hey, I wonder if they're going to invite the NIT," and she was telling me about this Crown thing, and she's like, "Well, if they're contracted, it's almost like if you're going to go to the Crown."
Right. There was no Big Ten teams in the NIT field, and it seemed like a lot of smaller colleges. Kent State was one of them that did make the NIT field. One of the many of the mid majors. It was interesting that Youngstown State, who had a pretty good year and finished as runner up in their Horizon League tournament, didn't get any bids.
Yeah, that's weird. So, in some ways, is the Crown better than the NIT now? Is that what they're trying to paint?
That's what it's kind of insinuating. They're getting the better schools. I mean, I seen let's see some of the other ones. Georgetown was in the field, and a couple of other Big East teams that didn't make the 68.
Well, and you're doing it in Vegas, like you said, you got some money involved there and everything else. Well, it came out today. Ohio State said, thanks, but no thanks. We're not going anywhere. I heard some speculation, and you never know. It's supposedly just a vote, so they could just say, "Hey, there's a good, Simpsons on tonight. We're not going to go play it." And you can say no for whatever reason you want to, or "Hey, I got a hot
Right.
date tonight. I'm not going," or whatever. But some people are speculating, saying, "Hey, could this mean that some guys are looking to transfer out? If you're looking to transfer out, why would you play in another tournament?" But I don't know.
Right. And this was their new coach's first full year at the helm, and it was a less than stellar ending. They kind of slumped at the end there, losing some key games. First to Indiana, and then to Iowa in the first tournament game. But and It was interesting. Indiana didn't make it in the. It was the another one of the first 4 out of the big tournament, the big dance, as we used to call it. No
Yes.
one calls it that anymore.
I miss the times. I know you young people out there love to watch every game. I miss the time where we had one channel for it and we just went back and forth between games.
Right.
Like now,
I thought
since
that was more appealing than you had that flavor,
yeah,
red zone flavor, where the endings were always captured live, and then they would switch around, and
yeah,
that
if
would
you
have
don't
been
see a game,
a TV producer's delight.
yes. If you don't see a game, you don't see a game. But I don't know. What do we know? We're the old fogies, and the new thing is we got to show every second of every game on a particular channel. It's like,
Right,
Who
and
cares?
they're even getting commercials. The Capital One commercials are linking up to this tournament coverage with Barkley as the primary
Yeah.
star of the show, and they had a good commercial yesterday of them going back in time to uh, cover the first ever basketball game with Dr. Naismith and the
Oh,
speech
really?
baskets. Yes, it was pretty good.
Oh, I gotta find that on YouTube. That sounds amusing. I really think we need, and I'm not just saying this because you said this. I think it's true. I think we need the NBA on TNT crew for about every basketball game ever. Like from here on out. I mean,
Right,
have them do the NBA, have them do the studio show for, college. Heck, for the Ohio high school tournaments. Just
right.
they could be a
Yes,
studio in New York. Just you don't have to go
I
up
would
every
I
week.
would second that one.
Oh, they're great. I mean, I guess they do some type of podcasts, some individual ones, but I want an NBA on TNT podcast where every day you can talk about, and please, not just basketball, anything else. That'd be
Right.
great.
Well, the NBA on TNT is going to be no longer after this season, but I think the Barkley and Kenny and Shaq and Ernie Johnson are going to continue with the program with the ESPN next year, but it's
Yeah,
still going to be produced by TNT.
right. So, I mean, yeah, you won't see on TNT, but they'll still be involved with TNT. I think part of it is that, like Ernie Johnson, he's a loyal guy. He's like, oh, I never want to leave TNT.
Right.
So, it could be produced by TNT, but will be shown about every other place in TNT. So,
Right. So, that's why, that there's a precedent for it now. And so we can buy the NBA on TNT bunch for the Ohio State final tournament.
yeah.
And that's on Spectrum now.
Oh, for the Ohio. Okay. Yeah, for the
Right.
Ohio high
Yeah.
school stuff.
Spectrum Cable's news channel will be covering these 7 championship games next weekend. I guess they're
Yeah.
what, on Friday and Saturday or
Yeah.
Saturday and Sunday?
Yeah. I think Friday and Saturday. Well, it might be
Okay.
Sunday too. Oh, well, they got 7 games, so it may need a third day. I don't know. I know Louisville plays Friday at 1.
Oh, okay.
But yeah. And,
And that's going to be at the Dayton Arena. So the Dayton Arena is going to be a busy place the next
yeah,
couple days.
I get it. Spectrum paid the most money. That's fine. But, there's other cable channels in Ohio other than Spectrum. And I know not everybody in Ohio is going to watch all 7 games. But it kind of stinks where
Right.
you have to have Spectrum to have it. And I get it. Spectrum paid them the most, but come on.
Right. And that is kind of goofy, and I'm sure a lot of people would have wanted to seen those semifinal games on TV also, and there was no vehicle for that.
Or
I think
even
the OHSAA blacked them out.
or even better yet, okay, Spectrum is going to be the one producing them, which is fine. Why can't they make that available to TV
Other
stations
stations in
around?
Ohio, right?
Or well, but to be honest with you, if it's a game that like Youngstown, if it's a game between two Cincinnati teams, unless you're just a basketball junkie, why would you care? But if they had, say, Ursuline was in the finals against whoever else, you could market it where even if your stations up there aren't, you know, Spectrum affiliated at all, you could just say, hey, we'll let you license the game, carry it on your channel for one day or something. That
Pretty
might,
soon we'll see the streaming services try to vie for high school basketball championships.
yeah, I get that. And I see, here's the problem, man. We're really going into my other podcast, but that's fine. I get frustrated because, like, now there's some new streaming services coming out. Like, I don't know if you heard Fox is actually having a streaming service now
Right.
later this year. In theory, that's great. But the problem is, it's like, okay, Fox is a content company, like all the companies we've worked with in the past. Well, but if you look at what Fox offers, okay, if you're right wing politically, you'll love Fox. Fine. If you like NFC football, you'll love Fox. Fine.
Right.
But how many people fit that exact description? Like, we're advertising streaming services not to a sports fan or a right wing guy or left wing guy or something. It's more like we're just marketing based on, well, don't you like the content that we put out? Well, sorry, people don't always like the content one particular company puts out.
Right.
Um, like I know even the company I work for, we have TV stations all across the country, which is great. We actually own the tennis channel, so that's part of our offerings, which is great. So if we had a streaming service for all of our TV stations, well, would you necessarily like tennis? Maybe you do, maybe you don't. And I just don't like that. I want a sports streaming service. I want a news streaming service. I want a sitcom streaming
Right.
service, a movie streaming service. I don't care
There's
about,
no such thing as a mass audience anymore. It's
yeah,
always that specialized niche that it seems like everybody's going for now.
yeah. And if you work for NBC, yeah, you're enthralled with Peacock. But if you're not, I mean, if you like a couple shows on Peacock, you get it. It's just I don't know. You got me worked up, guy.
I
So
know. I
I
usually do that.
yeah, yeah, just me yelling at myself, which is weird. A couple sports things, and I had a couple of serious journalism topics I want to talk about. I'm not a Bengals fan, but the Bengals made really, really big news over the weekend. Jamar Chase and T. Higgins got signed. I think Chase
The
got,
Brown family opened up their wallets, huh?
yeah, I think Chase got even a little bit higher than Garrett, and Higgins got about 30 million a year. It seems like a lot. You're like, what's going to happen to the rest of the cap? Well, understand the TV deals are driving the cap, and the cap's getting higher and higher. So
Right.
right now, if we were afraid the cap would get smaller, we'd be like, man, what are the Bengals doing? I bet you the way we're going in 5 years, this will be a cheap deal. There'll be
Right.
guys making oodles more than these guys are making.
And it won't, put them over the cap because it seems like those two receivers kind of uh, took all the raise really that the cap raised.
Yeah, I think it's going to hurt them this year. But overall, like when Deshaun Watson got that deal for the Browns, yeah, it was a bad deal because Deshaun hasn't played that well. But we were afraid of how much money would be. Right now, wait, they paid him a couple years ago really isn't that much. And I think it's going to be the same thing at the NFL. Yeah,
Right.
paying a receiver 40 million a year sounds ridiculously crazy. But the way the NFL keeps moving forward in terms of revenue and everything, I mean, I bet you in 3 years your top receiver might be making 60 million a year, and
Right.
it's going to fit under the cap because the revenue is going sky high. So
Right. And it's similar to what the Browns did with Miles Garrett, a non-quarterback now making exorbitant sums of money.
yeah, even the Steelers. I like DK Metcalf. I thought it was an interesting trade. I gulped when I heard that he was making 30 million a year over 5 years. But to be honest, for a top line receiver, that's what they're making.
That's going to be the going rate, as obviously what the Bengals did, keeping Joe Burrow happy. The only thing with the Steelers, they don't have a quarterback.
Well, it's going to be interesting. Some people say like the Steelers are probably your third team going into the season in terms of like picks or whatever. But the Bengals and the Steelers are interesting. The Bengals have a great offense, no defense. The Steelers have a great defense, no offense. So
Right.
who's the better team? I don't know. That's a debate you can have all day, but it's weird. And that's going to be the big question for the Bengals is how do you get better on defense? I mean, you don't have they signed some free agent today that was okay. There's some talk about the Bengals actually trying to get Trey Hendrickson back on a cap friendly deal. But
And this
really,
draft class, I think, is more. Uh, I mean, there's a few defenders, edge rushers, I know that are appealing, but how high are the Bengals picking? They may be all gone by the time the Bengals pick.
I think the Bengals maybe mid teens because
Yeah.
they don't make the playoffs like 15, 16 maybe. I would say, and again, as you said, it depends on who's there with each pick they have. I mean, but man, they probably should just pick all defensive guys, to be honest with you. I mean,
Right.
they're actually okay offense, but they just got to pick defense a lot because they don't have a ton of extra money. You know,
Right.
I was telling somebody earlier about the. I'm a Steelers fan, and you hear they came Pickett with the Browns kind of made me chuckle a little bit. But really, I don't think Kane Pickett's a horrible pickup for the Browns.
No, I didn't think it was. I mean, they upgraded. I mean, they traded DTR for Pickett, and I really would have Pickett than DTR.
Well, if you're really counting on Pickett to be your starter franchise quarterback, you're silly.
Right.
But the problem is the Browns gave Watson that big contract, they gave Garrett that big contract. They don't have, we were talking about all these other free agent quarterbacks out there that,
They can't even spend enough to get a Cousins or even a Rogers or a Wilson.
yeah, I mean, you look at Jimmy Garoppolo was a guy that re-signed with the Rams for $12 million a year. It was a 1 year deal. I don't think even, and I wouldn't give Jimmy Garoppolo $12 million a year right now.
Right. And Fields made what, 15 million?
20. That's why as soon as
20.
you think of
Okay.
that, yeah.
Right. So they couldn't afford him either. And I thought they would, at least have a shot for him. So that shows you they're probably going to pick a quarterback at number two and, hold their nose
Yeah.
and pick Sanders or trade down and get, somebody else lower in the first round.
Well, here's the problem. You can make arguments saying, hey, Justin Fields is a little bit younger. Maybe he has some potential. I'm not saying he's a bust by any means, but you look at everybody from Aaron Rodgers, Justin Fields, all the other guys that could be available, even when there was a ridiculous rumor that Trevor Lawrence could be traded. These
Right.
guys are all like B minus, C plus, C quarterbacks. They're not
Right.
terrible. They're not the worst in the world, but none of these guys are going to come to your team and make them a Super Bowl champ by any means. And I think that's kind of the problem that a lot of these teams are getting into. And like you said, the Browns don't really have money under the salary cap. So Kenny Pickett, and the dude's got warts. I would call maybe even a D quarterback. But how many guys out there can you get right now that's on a rookie contract?
Right. Right.
And you could probably make the argument. And again, Kenny Pickett's got warts. If you're starting him all year, you're not going to have a good football team. But right now, if you're capped out salary cap wise, he might be the best guy in
Right.
that
And the
for a year.
Browns, like the Bengals, may be drafting defense and, trade down or pick that Carter from Penn State as the edge rusher and to pair him up with Miles Garrett and that being an ultimate defense. So you don't really need a lot of points to win.
Well, here's how I would approach it if I was the Browns. There is a small chance, Kirk Cousins might be coming. I know the Falcons, he's
Right.
staying there, but he's staying there under a $10 million contract. That's tradable. And the
Right.
Browns might be able to afford him if they're careful in the way they spend the rest of their money. So he's kind of like your, hey, it might happen, it might not. Kenny Pickett is your kind of insurance policy where he can start in a pinch. I think the Browns definitely go quarterback at number two unless they get blown away by an offer. And if they get blown away by offer, I wouldn't be surprised if they trade down, maybe they trade down like the Giants at I think the Giants are 6 and the Raiders are 8th. Maybe you trade down there. Maybe you get a guy like Jackson Dart, who probably shouldn't get drafted that high. But I think
Right.
the way quarterbacks are drafted in the NFL will probably go up that high. So you can do something like that. So, I mean, your dream is, okay, maybe we can figure out a way of getting Cousins. Your insurance policy is Pickett.
Pickett, and then you have Dart as your future.
Or,
I could see them doing that, and that would probably. I mean, look at they had to do something to convince Garrett to sign, so they had to
oh,
have a
they
plan
gave him money.
in space.
I
So
think,
we're going to get some more quarterbacks coming.
dude, I shouldn't say too much of this because we're on a podcast that's going to be online forever. But there was a time where you surely took a job because I was like, whoa, they gave me a lot of money. It happens. If it happens with Chris, it definitely happens with Miles. I think that's why Miles, same with the Browns. And I also think the Browns realized, hey, we weren't going to get a lot back in trade for him because if he went somewhere else, they would have had to trade a lot for him and give him like a $40 million contract under the cap. And I don't think
Exactly.
there's that many teams that could do both, to be honest with you.
Right.
I will say, I don't be surprised if the Browns just take like a Ward or a Sanders at number two, and then you get it's the same philosophy. Pickett's your insurance policy. Cousins could be a guy that you could easily start for you for a year or two if you get him. But if not, you just have Pickett until Warner Sanders is ready.
Right.
And,
And you have Browns fans that are just fretting about that number 2 pick that, they're not they're the scouts are saying that Sanders isn't worth the number 2 pick. Well, you're going to blow a number 2 pick no matter what. They've done it before. So
right.
you might as well go with a quarterback.
And the
That's my
Steelers,
idea.
even though the Steelers have a better record, they're still kind of the same boat. They're
Right.
waiting. They're waiting on Aaron Rodgers, and I'm not crazy about Aaron Rodgers either. I think right now Aaron Rodgers is the best guy that's out there for you.
Right.
And
And the Steelers are going to have to draft a quarterback somewhere in the top 3 rounds.
yeah, and Aaron Rodgers is definitely not your like if they got Aaron Rodgers, he's not going to propel him past the Bills or the Chiefs. So again, it's one of those pie in the sky things. Maybe if you get Aaron Rodgers, you win a game or two more than you would have if you didn't have him, but it's not a bad thing. I kind of like what the Steelers did. Their insurance policy is Mason Rudolph. I like
Right.
Mason Rudolph a little bit more than Kenny Pickett right now. I
Somebody
think,
they're more familiar with.
and I
He
think they're
backed up
going.
Pickett, and he
Yeah,
got into a lot of games. And of course, Miles Garrett knows well about Mason Rudolph.
last time Rudolph played, he won a couple games at the end of the year to help the Steelers make the playoffs. And
Right.
I'm not thinking Mason Rudolph is going to the Super Bowl either. But the Steelers, as long as they have Tomlin, the defense they have, they're going to win 8, 9, 10 games. And
Right.
I think they'll win 8, 9, 10 games with Rudolph, and they might win a game more than that if they have Rodgers. So it's not. They're more of a defensive team anyway, and Rudolph isn't great, but he's not the
Right.
worst.
And they don't have to score a ton of points. And
Right.
and Mason Rudolph will somehow get the ball to Metcalf and get him down the field.
Yeah, Rudolph can throw it down the field, and my hope is I'm hoping that Pickens can play with Metcalf. That might be a half interesting duo.
Right.
Who knows? And Calvin Austin, he's a little guy. Um, he kind of reminds you the looks of like a Tyreek Hill. He's not nowhere near the same receiver, but he's done okay when he's gotten in. They'll look at him as the third guy next year. So again, don't look at this as like the greatest receiver tandem of all time, but it's something that could work. And um, Steelers fans shouldn't be super optimistic right now, but it's not as bad as you think. I'll phrase it like that. I want to ask you about the Cavs. Cavs won 16 in a row before yesterday. They lost to the Magic. Evan Mobley was out, so I mean, I don't think it's anything to fret about or anything. I would say with the Cavs, they got to stay healthy. They've been resting
Right.
some guys, and they just got to get in the flow of playing good basketball. And
Right. It looks like they have the Eastern Conference number 1 seed tied up, which would mean home field advantage, home court advantage in that Boston series if they meet Boston. There was, a little bit of a, concern that they lost to the Magic, who gave them such a tough time in the playoffs last year. But at the same time, they just were cold in the last. They lifted 5 threes down by 1 in the last 30 seconds and missed them all, which is really rare for the Cavs in this stretch. They've only lost 11 games all year. You only have 15 games left. So I agree with you. The big thing is stay healthy, rest those who have bumps and bruises, and that's what they did yesterday with Evan Mobley down. And it really shows you how valuable Mobley is. When
yeah,
Mobley is resting, their record is only 5-4.
well, and Donovan Mitchell said after the game, he's like, "Hey, he's not that hurt, but he's like, this shows you how important he is to us."
And
And
that's true because he would have been the rim protector in those final minutes. And there would have may have been the fouls that were called because the last 4 points that the Magic scored were on free throws because they were driving to the bucket and getting fouled. Whereas Mobley had a habit of really being tenacious with those long arms and not fouling and altering shots.
they got to rest guys, and they just got to play a consistently good level. Where yeah,
Right.
you're going to get losses again. They're not going to win every game down the road.
Right. It's the NBA. You're expected to lose. I mean, the Celtics have lost 19 games this year.
Well, here's the knock on the Cavs: is people are saying, look, with the exception of like a Donovan Mitchell, this is the team that the guys on the team has never gotten that far in the playoffs. And
Right.
I don't think that should be like, oh, they can't win now. But you can't throw everything out, you know. Hopefully they don't hit that wall. And I think Atkinson is doing a good job of this, is just trying to find a way of keeping them playing at a high level without pushing these guys to the limit where if they hit
Right.
game 85, they're like, oh my gosh, we're tired. We can't do this anymore. You know what I mean?
Right.
And I think he's done a pretty good job at it. And, I hate to wish away my life. I mean, the older I get, I want to savor and satisfy every day I have. But I'm kind of, I'm done with the regular season. Let's get to this playoffs and maybe
Right.
see what
And it
happens.
seems like we still have 15 more games to go. They got to go on a 5 game West Coast swing, although the 5 teams they're playing are at the bottom of the standing. So it'll be interesting how many, players will take some games off and what the record will be after these 5 games. So uh, I think they're just playing out the season and trying to stay healthy. So don't get too concerned with the losses that will come in these last 15 games.
Yeah. I don't know, it was crazy. At work, we had the game on. It was funny.
Right.
It's a plus for us ratings wise when the ABC affiliate in Columbus, when they ABC picks up more Cavs games, it's more closer games. So we
Right.
kind of made a big deal about it on the website saying, hey, we got a Cavs game now. It was funny. I'm a Pittsburgh Penguins fan, and it seems like even though the Penguins have kind of struggled this year, they're on ABC a lot more. So it's kind of funny to see. Well, not funny, but more fun to see the Cavs kind of get more national attention, which is good.
Right, it is, and they are picking up a lot of attention with the way they've been playing. 56-11. It's a great record. Not too many teams have started like this, and they've sustained it all through the year. And I expect them to lose a few down the stretch here because of resting players. They're not going to show all their cards in this final drive, especially when they have a practically 8 game lead in the loss column for the all important number one seed. They may lose the overall number one seed, but they'll get the one seed over the Celtics in the East, which is what really I think the goal is to make the NBA Finals this year.
One more quick sports note, and I want to end up with that. We have journalism issues we got to talk about here. I thought this was interesting, guy. I like watching some golf. Like there's a good golf channel on YouTube where there's some funny guys that play golf and they joke around. I play. There's a Masters video game. I'll play video games in the mornings and I'm walking on my treadmill,
Hmm.
and I get to play a round of golf at Pinehurst or St. Andrews or
Right,
whatever
right,
as I'm walking. It's a good time, but other than that, I don't know much about golf, and it kind of shocked me. And I'm in the news business. I'm like staring at a screen 8 hours a day in the newsroom. I didn't realize the Players Championship was yesterday, which is fine. But
right. A pretty big tournament before the Masters. I think it's the biggest one so far this year.
we haven't heard that much talk about it. Am I not just looking in the right circles, or
Yeah, I
is
think you may. And the fact is that it ended because of darkness, I think. It's in Florida, right? It's in
right?
Sawgrass, I think, Florida. They kind of had extended play because of weather or whatever, and they had a playoff this morning because of it. And Rory Calhoun, who is it?
Well, McElroy.
McElroy, yeah, uh, won it. And it was like done by 10 a.m. So that was interesting in itself that the playoff they extended it to this morning and they held it real early. So I guess maybe the the golfers wanted to start partying on St. Patrick's Day, so they started early, but it didn't help with the ratings.
Yeah, I'm just surprised. And again, I'm just not following enough golf people on Twitter or whatever. I just didn't know it was there. And again, and this is just me. Who knows? Maybe everybody else was following it
And
intently.
it could be because it was lost in all the basketball madness. NBC covered it, and I don't know if they're going to tape delay or had it live this morning. I really didn't know. It kind of got by me. The thing was over by the time I realized it.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know. It's just weird. Who knows? Huh. I keep getting Aaron Rodgers updates with nothing happening, which
Nothing happened.
well, I guess they're doing their job. You know, we want people to click, and whoever's sending me that story, it made me click on it. So it's kind of weird. All right. Some journalism things I wanted to mention. Maltic Live. Guy, I don't know if you ever met Austin Maltic up in the Youngstown area.
I've heard the name.
Yeah, Austin's a guy. I don't know a lot about him to be honest. Um, just a guy interested in sports, high school sports in the Youngstown area. He had a website. Not sure exactly. I met him a couple times. I met the guys. I'm not sure what the business plan was behind it, or like I didn't see a lot of advertiser or whatever the case might be. Well, Austin's kind of gone in and out of it a couple times. According to a tweet today, he's like, "Hey, I'm giving up. I'm doing another job." And I'll tell you, and I'll be honest, nothing personal against Austin. I run the half people can't say enough great things about the site, and the site's upset some other people for various reasons too, and we'll just leave that go. I will say though, Guy, you and I talk about this supporting local journalism. We've got to support local journalism because
Rightly.
all of these places, if it's something small like a Multic Live or to the place that you're still involved in, and I was involved in with Mahoney Matters, it takes money. And I know a lot of you guys are like, oh, remember when the families owned these sites? And, well, sorry, that's not happening anymore. It's by companies that if you and I ran a company, we need to make 10%,
Right.
and that's the way these other places feel. It's unfortunate and it's tough, but if you want that coverage of your local team, if you want coverage of your council or whatever else the case might be, support these local journalists.
Right.
And
Journalism is a business, and the journalists need to make a living. They have to put food on the table for their families. It's not a charity, and we have to support them.
well, I'll tell you everything, and we've always said this about Mahoney Matters, and I'll be honest, I stay in contact with the other. I don't know. I mean, God could probably tell us a lot more about what's happening in Mahoney Matters than I can right now. But I will say that when I was there, I'm sure it's the same way with the current editor. If you have more support, you can cover more things. I know a frustration that people have with Mahoning and the Trib and the Vindicator and all these other places is, oh, why aren't they covering each meeting of this, that, or the other thing?
Same
Well,
reason they have to
you
keep their
don't journal.
costs down.
Right. You don't have journalists. And here's the other thing, too, we have to start to figure out is I think we've changed what we've covered. Where in the past, like I remember 10 years ago in journalism, my editor was like, oh, we have to cover every big council meeting in the
Right.
area. Well, we don't do that anymore. And you might sit there and say, oh, that's frustrating, that's bad, it's evil. Well, people
Personally,
don't
I'm
read
seeing
through
that,
that stuff.
as the PIO at the prosecutor's office, I'm seeing that less and less journalists are in the courtroom. Whereas before they used to come every day for criminal day, especially the newspaper reporter. I was one of them, using it as a daily beat. They're not doing that anymore.
Well, I'm in a newsroom in the Columbus area, and Columbus, the newsrooms tend to be bigger. I'm sure our newsroom's bigger than the ones in Youngstown in
Right.
terms of TV and stuff like that. But I'll tell you, it's interesting. One thing that surprised me when I started to meet the reporters and hear about what they covered or not, the classic newsroom would say, "Oh, you're covering the State House, and you're covering,
Right.
I don't know,
Courts and crime.
yeah, yeah." And now, and I can't speak for Youngstown how much how they handle their stuff in TV, but we don't have dedicated reporters for some of that stuff. And it's not that we don't care; it's just more of, hey, if you have 3 or 4 reporters in a certain day, you can't just say, all right, you're just covering State House and nothing
Right. They
else.
use the term general assignment. It's
Right.
whatever's happening, you're going to expected to cover it.
And I'm guessing, and again, I can't speak for our friends up at 21 or 27 up there, but I'm guessing is probably what they look at is you're like, all right, we have three reporters. Here's what we can cover, and here's what we can't. And
Right. And they're covering 5 counties up here in the Youngstown area. So, that will spread them pretty thin pretty fast.
well, we've covered now. We tend to do more of a focus on Franklin County, where Columbus is at, but we've covered things an hour north and an hour south. Now,
Right.
if we're going an hour north, it has to be a bigger situation. But we've done features in Mansfield, which is about our north. So
Right. And then an hour, you go into almost to Dayton and
um,
Cincinnati.
I don't know how far west. I talked to somebody. They were talking about Logan County to the south, which is down,
Right.
getting close
Almost to
to
Ohio U,
yeah.
almost to Athens. And yeah, that would be a news kind of desert for media. So yeah, to the east and to the southeast of Columbus, yeah, there are less major markets there, so you would have a lot more viewers than maybe in the Dayton or Cincinnati areas, which have their own media market.
Well, and there's issues both ways, and I can see both sides of the coin. So, yeah, support local journalists, or you're not going to have it. And again, I don't know exactly what Multick's reasoning is, or what's his new gig, or whatever else the case might be. But it comes down to money. It's hard, and I would guess. And guys, stop me if I'm speaking too far out of school. Like this podcast, we do lots of these podcasts. We pump out a lot of stuff, but this is a hobby. Hey, if you can pay us,
Right.
great. I think Maltic was kind of looking at what could have been a hobby and making that more of his full time thing.
Right, and the line is kind of blurred between the amateur journalists, if I may, and people that like you and me who were actually in the business, in newspapers, in TV stations, or in radio, making money for years. That was our living. And now with the onset of all the technology, you have a lot of people getting involved in journalistic endeavors, let's say, but not necessarily professional.
Well, here's the challenge, and you even hear from like Elon and some of these other people that they're pumping. They're like, "Oh, citizen journalists and everything." And
Right.
in theory, I love the idea. Remember in the good old days, someone got laid off. You were done. You couldn't write. I mean, unless you wanted to write your family Christmas letter,
Right. Right.
And now, I mean, geez, guy, you and I could sit here and say, all right, we're going to start a site about fill in the blank. If it's a
Right. And we
local
can
thing.
just put out a bunch of newsletters or press releases, and there it is. And we have podcasts to supplement them.
Yeah, and no offense against Austin Baltic, but we could do Baltic Live today. We could, say we're going to cover Yanks on sports or whatever. But the hard thing about it is anybody can do it, but to do it right, and it takes a lot of time, effort, energy. Like if I say, hey, I'm going to cover the Minnesota Vikings, yeah,
Right.
I could probably AI
And
some.
marketing, let people know that you're
Yeah,
doing this. And maybe that was kind of the problem, because Austin, he didn't really get it out there, especially to Trumbull County.
yeah. Well, and you get to the point where I don't know, just everything takes time, which makes it hard. Sorry. All right, hang on a second. I need to talk to my daughter. Tell me, can you talk for about 30 seconds about what's happened in Mahoning? Let me. My daughter's starting to melt down. I'll be right back.
Okay.
With what you're doing for Mahoning Matters.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm, still doing mostly sports and television. I'm doing a lot of the television listings for March basketball games and what's on. Like, for instance, I just sent out a listing of all the first round and first four NCAA tournament games coming on uh, Tuesday through Friday, and then I'll probably update it for the rest of the week. And I'm still doing the court news that maybe is not warrant a news release from our office, but still keeping up on some of the minor cases for all of the media basically, and some extra ones for Metro Mahoning Matters.
Yeah, fantastic. And, stay tuned to that, MahoneyMatters.com. Great site. I'm looking for ways to stay involved and kind of to be determined for now. Leave it at that. But I keep following what Guy and Mike, and I know Kelsey Norris and Jessica Payne do it on Mahoney Matters. Always good stuff. Hey, last thing I wanted to mention, Voice of America. They're a national organization.
Right, a long time organization.
Well, and here's the thing. Okay, yeah, we're getting into politics. Trump wants to decrease the size of government workers. Apparently, the job losses are now being felt in Voice of America. I will say, as a journalist, I hate to see anyone lose their job. So it's a tough day for all of us journalists out there. But I'll be honest, I really haven't read a lot of Voice of America content, so I'm not going to like beat the table and go, "Oh, I loved it" or
Right,
whatever.
it's not like NPR going down.
Right. I,
That would be something different, which is another government, broadcasting wing,
I,
or
I do
PBS,
I do
which
think
may be subject to some of the more Trump cuts. We shall see.
I think we need to figure out, and if it's Trump, if it's Biden, Harris, whatever president you want to put in there, I think there can be a friendlier way that we can protect journalism. I don't want government to control journalists. That's
Right.
why Voice of America always was kind of weird
Well,
to me.
yeah, it kind of harkens back to the Cold War and NATO when we were
Mm,
like in it, and it would go out to kind of get the American message to Europe, and kind of like a cheerleader for America. That's what I got. My idea of Voice of America, and maybe its time has passed. So I I, I don't know. What we haven't heard about it too much in recent times.
Well,
So what they've been doing.
I don't appreciate the reasoning that Trump has. I'm not in support of how Trump's doing it, but you know, and maybe Voice America is even the best argument for this. I guess what I'm thinking is, I'm thinking today about like Multic Live and this other stuff, and where we're at. I mean, the Vindicator used to be this, high profile paper that had a billion journalists. They couldn't afford it anymore, so they sold. Now we have, I think, we don't have a journalism desert in Youngstown. We just have a bunch of places that are understaffed. They're trying to give you what needs
Right.
to happen and everything. I wish there was some way, and I
It's
don't know
more
the
like Swiss cheese, I think.
yeah, and I don't know the answer for this. I'm definitely not saying the government should buy up the media because that's scary in a bunch of other ways. But we need to have a better way of at least getting information out there. You know what I mean?
Right.
If you're like a local high school fan and you're upset about Multic Live, look, Multic Live was just one guy who, out of the goodness of his heart, did a website. We need a better answer overall for this. Like the Vindicator
Right.
is never going to have enough sports writers to cover all the games you want them to cover. Mahoney Matters will never have enough sports writers for that. So, what do you do? I wish there was a better way of just getting the info out there to help local communities out. You know what I
Right.
mean?
And my job itself is, it may, be threatened with the county budget crisis coming,
Oh,
but
yeah.
it was there originally to help supplement the news organizations get court news to the public, and that's what I'm still dedicated to doing. And that is one of my main concerns is that newspapers and TV just don't cover the courts as much as they used to, and so just kind of a vehicle for the editors and the producers to use to try to get the news from the courts, and so I'm hopefully still be able to do that through for a couple more years at least.
It would be great to see. And again, I think the other thing about Voice of America is some of their content was going to help our standing in the world too.
Right.
couldn't we have like a Voice of America to have one place you can find your local news at? You know what I mean? And I'm not even talking about your city council corruption. I'm talking about even like the hey, here's the score of the game last night or whatever.
Right, right,
I don't know how to do it. And honestly, I'm in the corporate side of journalism, so I understand how the money, dollars and cents work. But like, I get personally frustrated. Like my nephew plays on a high school football team up in Northeast Ohio. Yeah, it's a smaller team. It's Division 7 of high school football. But guy, I'll be darned to have even find a score of his
right.
games off of
Or even you want to keep up with your alma mater, Louisville, and
yeah.
some of the players and personalities. Where is that? Where you can go there? They're in the state finals in basketball. You get a good interview from the coach to see how he feels, and the players, the top players. You don't have that, do you?
Oh, here's the other thing that's just ridiculously hard right now. Well, again, man, I am so old, dude. I would not be having these conversations 20, 30 years ago. But it's like you just can't. Here's what I don't like about communications as a whole. So if my communications is how to get updates about guys' life, or if it's the Louisville basketball score, or if it's what's happening Young Youngstown State Council. It's like everyone has a different way of presenting that. You know what I mean? I
Right.
mean, maybe I'm like, all right, guy will send me more text, or puts out more Facebook message, whatever. Everybody's different. It just makes it harder to find that news. And as you say, guys, it's tough when uh, counties having like a budget crisis, or if maybe you're in a small school district, or you're in a small the church you go to doesn't really have a good bulletin or a website to get stuff out there. What do you do? And yeah, we just have, I don't know. Aren't we supposed to be better than this in 2025? Like,
Right.
and it
It
seems
seemed
like,
like, 30 years ago, things, we were more primitive in technology, but news seemed to be getting out a lot better than it is today.
well, yeah, I think part of it's our political diatribe, because it's like when this social media first came out, the first one we knew about was Facebook. And Facebook always has problems. But let's have one site where you don't have to love the site, where information's going out there or something else. I just
Right.
I don't know, man. It gets so confusing anymore at times. I don't know.
Well, that's what we have this podcast to kind of knock around ideas. Hopefully somebody be watching and kind of come up with, to help us come up with some of these ideas too.
Well, talking about supporting local journalism, hey, if I can get a couple million, I'll start hiring some full time, not just podcasters, but like journalists, and we'll start covering this stuff.
Hey, I saw, somewhere that there was $1 million instant lottery winner out of Austin town. So
Really?
maybe we got to go knock on his door.
There's a Powerball Monday. We're taping this Monday. It's like almost worth 400 million. Here's the problem: if I win that Powerball, and I don't play the lottery, my wife's not gonna be like, "Oh, now you can start that news organization." No, she'll be like, "Let's retire," and then we'll be
Yes.
done with it. So,
Yes. You wouldn't be seeing us around if we hit that Powerball.
yeah, but it'll be fun to do a podcast just to screw around.
Oh, yeah. We would be doing it from the beach.
Yeah, from the beach or whatever. Or I don't know. Or we can say what we really feel by everybody. Yeah, not just guarded stuff that we do now. We'll be absolute and won't matter since we'll be so rich. So, all right. Anything else you're looking at, or is
Well,
that a
no,
line before you go?
other than the regular court action this week and lots of basketball continuing in March. No, hopefully the weather will warm up. It kind of went down a little bit, and we'll have warmer days ahead. And looking forward to doing some outdoor work.
All right. Well, sounds good. For guys, this is Chris. Sky, hang on for a second,
Okay,
and have a great day, everybody.
bye now.